Joel, get up. Joel, f***ing get up. Please stop. Please don't do this. Joel, please get up. No!
Yeah.
2023 has started off right with nature healing. It's about time. Who would have ever thought that the sacred Elden Salt would be spilling over into the next year? It's just that potent. Miyazaki's simply on a whole other level, just like the salt I provide.
Banger after banger after banger!
If there was ever a time to believe in a god, now would be it, and that god would be Miyazaki. This man single-handedly broke down the morale of every PlayStation fanboy in existence. And do you know how long I've been trying to do that for now? For years, and I've done nothing but fail at it. At this point, I'm willing to believe Miyazaki can part the Red Sea, because never in my life would I have imagined a cinematic experience like The Last of Us 2 would be dethroned by a video game. That doesn't happen often in the industry these days. The odd obsession with trying to be Hollywood has left me to believe there's simply no hope. And then along comes Miyazaki to prove to everyone that good old gameplay still prevails in the end. Because if you haven't heard the news, The Last of Us Part 2 is no longer the most awarded game in history.
They already posted it.
Well, they can f***ing unpost it!
Oh wait, hold on, Frit, wait a minute. Are you serious? Was The Last of Us 2 really titled the most awarded game in history? Yes, yes it was.
God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him.
A title we can all agree it never deserved to begin with. It was the gaming journalist's darling. That one game that really made you question where the industry was heading. Because it was thrown every single award in the book and given monumental praise by the mainstream. Yet the user reviews did not reflect that whatsoever. So many were left with the sour taste of Neil Drunkman in their mouth. To see a game that split the community in half be the most awarded made no sense. So to finally see a game that actually deserves it take the title, it makes it really feel like nature's healing. So yeah, it does make me glad to see we're moving away from these dark ages. The over-the-shoulder third-person cinematic adventure game is at long last finally starting to wear out gamers, and it shows. But at the end of the day, it's just a title, one that can be taken by any other game in the future. Oh, but the PlayStation fanboys sure loved it. Anytime you logged onto social media, any conversation surrounding The Last of Us 2 always starts with the most awarded game in history. So to see The Last of Us 2 stripped of such a pretentious title after only holding it for a pitiful 2 years does bring a huge smile to my face, I'm not gonna lie. Miyazaki just fixed the internet, can you believe it? Anyways, here's the salt following that.
Oh yeah.
How does it feel?
Oh yeah.
Where are you going?
Oh yeah.
Huh, I want a oh yeah. Or maybe just a half of a half, huh?
It's official! Elden Ring has surpassed The Last of Us Part 2 as the most awarded video game ever made.
Elden Ring doesn't have the narrative, the score, the facial animation, the visuals, the sound design that God of War has. I played 5 or 6 hours of Elden Ring.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
It was bored. I really do not understand this.
This means do you want to admit that you lost and pack it in?
Me? No.
5 to 6 hours? Really? I've seen crackheads put more time into rehab than that. Sounds to me like a skill issue. You probably got to that tree sentinel, couldn't beat him, and you uninstalled the game. Let's face it, that's what happened. Most of the people who are critical of this game, saying it's got no narrative or story, just couldn't get past the tree sentinel. But don't you just love how PlayStation fanboys have this tendency to list off all the things that don't matter about video games? Facial animations, visuals, sound design, design. Notice how not a single one of them ever lists anything gameplay related, because they're all suckers for presentation. They don't notice how mid the gameplay is if you wrap it in a pretty bow. If you need any more proof that casualization of video games is doing damage, look no further. Here's the best example of it. All those pretty graphics Sony keeps pushing out is frying people's brains, because they really got people believing the closer a video game looks to a movie, the better it is.
Don't worry, Guy. We will be back at the top with The Last of Us Part 3. It's also official. All those awards that were given to Elden Ring was given by single virgins who play on PC or Xbox all day.
It's funny because it's true.
Based on fake awards on Reset Era.
Newsflash, all these awards are fake. They're just made up on the spot and handed out. None of them hold any actual meaning or value, and the majority of them are handed out by websites. So they're invisible, intangible objects that we're supposed to pretend exist. So congratulations, Miyazaki. I'm sure you're running out of room for all of those internet trophies on your shelf. The Last of Us Part 2 is no longer the most awarded game of all time. Elden Ring has taken the throne with 223 awards, beating The Last of Us 2 Part 2 by 1 award.
No. It's too low.
Elden Ring Game of the Year awards are being tracked by Reset Era people who are looking for any minuscule Game of the Year award and adding it on. The website that tracked awards before is no longer updating it.
Mofo paid $8 for Twitter.
Excuse me? Just exactly how do you think The Last of Us 2 was given this title? Through a collection of a bunch of pointless awards across the internet from several outlets. And by the way, the original website is up and running perfectly fine. The link was just different. You can see it right here. And they're tracking it the exact same way they did for The Last of Us 2. I love how he's complaining about Reset Era, looking for every single minuscule award on the internet to hand to Elden Ring when that's exactly what they did for The Last of Us 2, and it was praised for it. Now all of a sudden all those awards are pointless, minuscule, and irrelevant. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Don't compare Masterpiece with another generic Souls game. One only thing that makes it special is its difficulty.
No maidens. Skill issue.
And meanwhile, the only thing The Last of Us 2 has going for it is its graphics. At the very least, when it comes to difficulty, that's a lot more related to gameplay and relevant to a video game than the visuals. God forbid the only thing a game has going for it is its gameplay. How dare it? Haven't they learned from Neil Druckmann now that gameplay is not the most important thing when it comes to making a video game? To think all that time they wasted building excellent bosses could have been spent on making an atrocious sex scene instead. Take notes, Miyazaki.
People defrow Elden Ring. All it really is another Souls game, nothing new.
It's what we wanted all along.
Why do they always try to make it seem like that's a bad thing? Souls games are some of the most highly rated and beloved games of all time, and not a single one of them is generic. I don't know, maybe except for Dark Souls 2. Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and now Elden Ring. From Software is sitting on top of a throne of absolute bangers, and each of those games brought something new to the table, while simultaneously evolving the Souls-like formula. The only new thing The Last of Us 2 brought to the table was a character that everybody absolutely hated and wanted to see dead from the beginning all the way to the end of the game, and never getting that satisfaction. And he says people deep-throat Elden Ring, but my god, people have been deep-throating The Last of Us for nearly 10 years now. And it got far worse when The Last of Us 2 was titled Most Awarded Game in History. The type of deep-throating Review Tech USA couldn't even do with a cucumber. And well, seeing as how The Last of Us 2 is no longer crowned Most Awarded Game of all time, I feel it's appropriate to at least give him the second best award, Most Deep-Throated Game of all time.
That's kind of crazy.
Explain yourself.
Oh no, believe me, you would really, and I mean really have to severely fuck up to be on the level of The Last of Us 2. I don't think there's a single thing From Software could ever do to get a user score like The Last of Us 2. These games mirror each other in the amount of hype that was behind them, but when it came to reception, it's not even close. One is a timeless classic, the other's a timeless controversy that will forever be remembered as the game that split gamers in half. So yeah, I guess I do agree with him. From Software could never reach the levels of disappointment that Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us 2.
All this chaos for part 3 to take over in a few years!
How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
Really now? After the disaster of part 2, you're banking this hard on part 3? Who in the hell would have any confidence in Neil Druckmann after that disaster? The only way you could ever make it up to The Last of Us fans would be to retcon that story entirely, but let's face it, Neil Druckmann has far too much pride in his own work to do that, and he hasn't left fans much hope either. But in Miyazaki, we trust. When it comes to Miyazaki, you get banger after banger, because let's face it, Miyazaki, unlike Neil, has an interest and passion for making video games. Whereas in Neil's passion is using video games to further his other ambitions, which is basically directing straight to DVD quality type of movies. Because let's face it, if The Last of Us 2 wasn't a video game and was instead solely packaged as a movie, it would be laughed out of the box office.
I don't see an Elden Ring movie!
2023 has barely started, and the jokes are already writing themselves. PlayStation fanboys, they really want their games to be movies. Thank God From Software isn't like Naughty Dog and prioritizes its resources into producing more video games over spin-off TV shows with low-budget actors that look like they're a few chromosomes off from their video game counterparts. A poorly CGI-generated low-budget Elden Ring movie is the last thing I want. What we want is content updates for Elden Ring, and that's exactly what we're getting. Meanwhile, Naughty Dog can't get up off their asses to go make The Last of Us Factions, and that shit's been overdue for what? 2 years now? Hey, Neil, weren't we supposed to give The Last of Us 2 players a multiplayer like 2 years ago? Not now. Can't you see I'm busy helping redirect the exact same story I wrote almost 10 years ago for TV? I'm a visionary. Gameplay is beneath me.
What innovation has Elden Ring brought? Old assets? Old combat system? Old engine?
You know, I'm still convinced people who use that word don't actually know what it means. Innovation doesn't mean quality. It doesn't mean excellence. It's not a measurement of whether something is good or not. Games don't have to innovate to be good. And even then, what exactly is so innovative about The Last of Us 2? It's the same streamlined cinematic experience we got nearly 10 years ago on the PlayStation 3. Hell, it's the same cinematic experience we're getting from most AAA games to this day. People throw the word innovation around, but yet fail to realize that nothing has really been innovated in the industry for quite some time. But between both Naughty Dog and From Software, it cannot be argued. From Software has innovated far more in the industry than Naughty Dog has. Hell, they're the reason an entirely new genre of games even exists. And when you're that innovative, there's nothing left for you to do except perfect your formula, which is exactly what Elden Ring did.
That was impossible! A game without dialogue and story!
Oh, it's the same goddamn comment. Why do they all parrot the same talking point? How far did any of these jackasses get in the game? The only way to not know the story to Elden Ring is if you never popped that disc in and booted it up to begin with, because you're throwing all sorts of exposition right out the gate. He says there's no dialogue, but talking to an NPC is like the first thing you do in the first 10 minutes of the game. Hell, dialogue is key to even figuring out how to beat this game. Do they just see what other PlayStation fanboys say about the game and believe them by default? To say it has no story is retarded, but to say it has no dialogue, y'all are pushing me. You really are. I'm about to commit a goddamn felony. I'd make a nature's healing joke here, but I'm glad that games are being rewarded for being games. I feel Elden Ring is the antithesis of what The Last of Us tried to achieve. Its storytelling was woven into the gameplay. Meanwhile, The Last of Us wanted to tell a story rather than be a game.
Crazy to see that gamers are still emotionally broken over a video game years later. The Last of Us is successful by being positive. Enjoy what you like and let the rest of the market have their taste.
How about no?
Why can't you just let us enjoy The Last of Us 2? Why are you trying to rob us of our love of this game? Just let us enjoy it! And we're the emotionally broken ones, okay? There needs to be a serious character study done on The Last of Us 2 stands. These people treat criticism of the game as an attack on their own mother. Here's a little life lesson for you kids. Usually anytime anyone on the internet says, why can't you just let us enjoy something? Those are usually the signs of a very insecure and unstable person who simply doesn't want criticism of something they enjoy to exist. None of us have the power to take anyone's taste away. The real lesson to be learned here is that you shouldn't be bothered by what people think of this game. But unfortunately, instead, you deflect all valid criticism of this game as emotional damage. You know, it really says something when haters of this game are more willing to have an honest discussion about it than fanatics of it. It's easier for them to dismiss critics as lunatics than it is for them to list why they love the game. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of that just comes from denial. Many fanboys were hyping this game up as if it was going to be the greatest thing to ever release to mankind. And then when it did, it got mixed results. And that's putting it lightly. But of course, because these are PlayStation fanboys, they have to double down. Deep down inside, they know it is not the game they wanted it to be. Meanwhile, Elden Ring actually did end up being the game everyone wanted it to be. And that's why they're so goddamn salty. The title of most awarded actually feels properly earned by Elden Ring, whereas it never felt properly earned by The Last of Us 2. Elden Ring has passed The Last of Us Part 2 to become the most awarded game ever. Currently at an incredible 323 Game of the Year awards. Congrats to From Software on the amazing accomplishment.
To be fair, they've changed the awards. Now they count random websites and YouTube channels they didn't before.
Actually wrong, they're counting less now than they did 2 years ago for The Last of Us 2. The Facebook and Instagram and Twitter polls that existed at that time were not counted for Elden Ring. So there was actually less artificial padding this time around. But don't you just love how the PlayStation fanboys have to damage control it? You know, Elden Ring had an advantage this year that the Last of Us 2 didn't. Oh, shut up.
PlayStation isn't their own league. To beat The Last of Us Part 2 in awards, you have to be one of the best games ever without discussion. Can't wait for The Last of Us Part 3.
Yeah, well, the Elden Ring being so good it just goes to show how good The Last of Us 2 was. Yeah, the secondhand embarrassment I'm getting from reading these comments, my god. You know, the funniest part is, none of us have to try and convince people Elden Ring is good. The majority of the community agrees. However, when it comes to The Last of Us 2, that crowd, to this day, tries their hardest to convince everyone it's the greatest game ever made. When a defense force for a video game exists, you know there's something wrong with that game. But at long last, the inorganic feeling of The Last of Us 2 carrying that title has finally been washed away, as if something in the universe has been restored. Who would have ever thought we would start the year off right? This usually doesn't happen. So you should all embrace it. Snort up that fat pile of salt. If you don't live from it, who cares? Life is supposed to be spent, not hoarded. Quit pretending like you didn't enjoy it. You know you love it. We all know there's a big ass smile on your face right now. It's okay, there's one on mine too. 2023 is off to a great start, and it's getting even better now that Quantum TV has been flagged on YouTube. Oh my, what a great start. And if you're feeling it, then you should like, comment, share, subscribe if you so choose to. With that being said, I'll see y'all in the next one.
Free Congo sucks ass.